So before we begin, some terms that you guys need to familiarize yourself with when discussing perspective are: number one, the vanishing point; number two, the horizon line; then the horizon. So another one is distortion, and we will not really go into perspective like that, because with basic understanding of perspective, you just need basic understanding of perspective to do what we want to do here. So let me explain each of these terms one by one. So basically, what a vanishing point is pretty much where everything appears to recede, where everything appears to recede to. It is a single point. A perspective grid can have more than one vanishing point, since there are different types of perspective. Since we will get into that now. There's 1 point perspective, there's 2 point perspective, there's 3 point, there's 4 points, all the way to 5 points perspective. But for this class, we're only going to be discussing 1 and 2 points perspective. So when discussing perspective, all the objects in the scene appear to go towards a particular point. So that point is what we call our vanishing point. And for 1 and 2 point perspectives, the ones we are going to be discussing today, that vanishing point is found on the horizon line. Let me show that to you now. It's found on the horizon line that we discussed earlier. So this is your horizon line, and your vanishing point is usually a point on this line. Now let me explain something for you guys. Imagine a road. I'm not sure if you could have seen these illustrations where they will show like a road that looks like it's going off into the distance. Then you see a bunch of poles on the side, like street lights. Then you see a bunch of street lights leading off into the distance. So this point where everything appears to be going towards is called the vanishing point. And this line where the vanishing point sits on is the horizon line. I decided to do this tutorial digitally because it is more easier when talking about perspective, because I don't want to be drawing perspective grid every time. Here you go. That's pretty much the first 2 terms. We've discussed our vanishing point and our horizon line. Now let's talk about our horizon, and we will talk about distortion. The difference between the horizon and the horizon line is this: the horizon and the horizon line, sometimes they are the same thing, while sometimes they are not. So let's pick this as our horizon line now. Okay, let's choose the blue. Let's call the blue our horizon. Let us call it our horizon line. Let the blue be our horizon and bring it down. Now let me make our horizon line red. The thing about the horizon line, what the horizon line is basically, where you are looking from, where the viewer's eye is. The viewer's eye, you can call it the viewer's eye, or where the camera's eye is. So when you are standing and looking straight forward, where you are the level that is directly at your eye level is where the horizon line will appear in your image. So in reality, you can change the horizon line, but then when you take a picture, the horizon line is pretty much decided already in the picture. So that's the major difference between looking at the horizon line when you're drawing realistically and horizon line when you're drawing from a picture. So now the difference between, I told you guys no chicken scratches. Look at my lines.
Let me do it again.
Let's forget that. Horizon is not. Let me clean up these lines first. So let's say this is our horizon line. No matter where they are standing, I told you perspective, everything recedes to a single point, and as everything moves away from you, they become smaller. For objects of the same height, objects that are the same height, the further they recede into the distance, the smaller they become. But one thing remains constant: the eye level. Now our viewer here, let's say is 50 meters, is not 50 meters tall. His eyes lie at this place. Let's say This is somewhere around the nose. These boxes I'm drawing, this is the head and this is the whole body. I'm just simplifying the bodies into boxes. And these are the boxes of the people. You can put the hand there and put the leg there if you want to. But I'm simplifying them. So no matter how where you are drawing them in the image, even if you are drawing them as far as this head is too big. As long as they are the same height, the part of the, let me put nose, let the horizon line be at their nose. As long as they are the same height, all their noses will be on that horizon line. So this tip is not really relevant here, but it's going to be helpful if you want to draw multiple characters in perspective. If they're all of the same height, let me clean this extra lines. If they're all of the same height, wherever the horizon line lies on for one person, the horizon line will lie on that same place for the rest of them. Talking about, so for 1 point perspective, 1 point, let me just lower the opacity of this line so that they will not distract us. So yeah, I've picked our horizon line. Already. So let me explain 1 point perspective. For 1 point perspective, there is only one vanishing point that everything recedes to. No matter where it's coming from, everything goes to this point. Then the objects you are drawing, let's draw a box in perspective now. The front of the box is going to follow your grid. That's why I put this grid. From 1 point perspective, the box is going to follow your grid. The only lines that will not follow your grid are the lines that are moving towards the vanishing points. Those are the only lines that will not follow your perspective grid. Every other line will either be perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal relative to the vanishing points. And that is 1 point perspective. Now to illustrate further, let's draw a street here. This method of explaining is something I learned from an artist. His name is, I think, Mr. Draw or something. It's on YouTube. He has really nice videos for beginners. He explains them in a very good way. So let's imagine a street like we drew earlier. So let's put the lamppost somewhere here. And you know, I told you, the further things get away from you, the smaller they become. And let's put another lamppost somewhere here. Okay, we need to shorten the head of the lamp. Which kind of eraser is this one, sir? Let's shorten the head of the lamp. The head, that front is not following the perspective grid. So everything has to follow the perspective grid. So this is the front of the lamp, this is the back of the lamp. I've drawn a perspective grid for the back and I've drawn one for the front. So now you can see the distance between these two lamps. I'm using their heads to illustrate the distance. The distance between these two lamps. This is it. What I want to show you guys now is how to space things in perspective. So, you know, when you're walking on the streets or you're driving down a very long road, the lamp posts or the, let's say, telephone poles or street lights, they tend to be a certain distance from each other, almost the same distance from each other, if not exactly the same distance from each other. But then as you look, let's say you are standing down a very long road, let's say Third Mainland Bridge now, and looking straight down. If you look, the distance between the poles gets smaller from your point of view, but in reality the distance between the poles are the same. So there is actually a way to draw the poles to make them more believable. I don't know the words to use now. So let's draw our poles. If we want to draw the next pole here, how are we going to put it in such a way that it will be in perspective but it will be in the same distance? In reality, it's going to be the same distance away from each other. I should have illustrated that. Posing, it has to be the same distance away from each other. Same distance. So we're looking at it from the side. So let's assume these are the two first poles. We're looking at it from, let's say our viewer, this person is standing here and looking at the poles like this. Let me draw that. It's bigger than his hands. Let me give him another color. So let's say standing here. Let's say standing here. This is the same guy over here. He's standing here and he's looking at this poles. So let's say he's standing here. I'm just illustrating now. And he's looking at this poles. So in reality, the distance between each of these poles is the same. But how do we show it in perspective? The key is the distance between these poles is a third of the distance between the next two poles. Okay, I'm explaining it all wrong. Let's start again. The distance between these two poles is going to be a distance, is going to be a third. The distance between these two poles is 1/3, 1/3 of the distance between the next two poles. So let's assume this is distance 1 plus this distance again. Okay, sorry, let's start starting from the head of this one. This is 1, 2, 3. So, unlike 1 point perspective, for 2 points perspective is pretty straightforward. Since 1 point perspective, 2 points. So here, for 2 points perspective, what do we have for 2 points perspective? The major difference between 1 point and 2 point perspective is that since 1 point perspective has 1 vanishing point, 2 points perspective has 2 vanishing points. Woo! 2 vanishing points. Let me shift this down. So if it has 2 vanishing points, what does this mean? What does this mean if it has 2 vanishing points? What it means is that now all the horizontal lines recede towards a particular point. Either they recede towards this point or they recede towards this point. It has to be one of the two. And do you know what this means? It means the horizontal lines no longer follow the grid. So I can remove those. No more horizontal grids. The only relevant grid for 2 points perspective is the vertical grid. all the vertical lines are parallel except from the all the lines are converging lines in 2 point perspective except from the horizontal or except from the vertical lines, which are perfectly vertical and perpendicular to each other. So that is the major difference between 1 and 2 point perspective. So now, like we illustrated before, let us, now you can see, now for 2 point perspective, let us draw a street in 2 point perspective as two vanishing points. Now let's draw a street or streets in 2 point perspective. So our first lamppost is going to be here. And now remember the horizontal lines. Remember in our 1 point perspective, the top of our lamppost were perfectly vertical, perfectly horizontal like this. But since I told you, all the horizontal lines now are receding towards somewhere. So the top of our lampposts are going to be affected by perspective. So they will no longer be straight. The next lamppost the next one, like I said, that rule of third still stands. So 1/3 of this distance is something like this. So let's add it to this one. So this is where the top of our next lamppost will be. It's going to angle towards our vanishing point. Let me make this lamppost bulkier. So it can be more clear than the brother over there. So there you have it, our next lamppost. And so on. 1/3 of this distance. Next lamppost. Remember, it's going to act towards. Then we bring it down. It's not clear again because all the lines are already competing for space. So that's pretty much it. If you want to put it on this side too, it's the same analogy you're going to use. Our first lamppost is going to angle towards this side. Then the next one, we'll put it in there. On top of this distance, will give us this, roughly this. That's where the next side goes. Whatever you're drawing, if you want to make them equally spaced, if you are drawing them in perspective and you want them to be equally spaced, this analogy is very useful. Another way you can space, so let's draw a box. We're doing this one in 1 point perspective. Another way to space it is to do like this. You draw an X. Then draw a second box. You draw a line going from here directly through the center of this box. Let me make it a different color so that you guys can see it more clearly, and now I'll give you the rest of them. You draw a line coming from this corner, going through the center of this box. Wherever it lands, that is where you place your next box. And you do the same again. Let's draw an X. Now I do the same again. Let's make this the center. The perspective grid, you can see it matches. It's at the center. Let me paint the side of these boxes. If you want to put the next one, same thing, like this. That's where you place the next box. Next one, from here, like that, until you reach your vanishing point. So actually, perspective is one of the more interesting parts of drawing. I love doing perspective exercises. So now let's discuss the T overlap. What is the T overlap? Basically, the T overlap is a term used. What the T overlap is something that helps us. It's a tool that helps us show depth in our drawings. So the reason why I am discussing T overlap with three-dimensional shapes is because they go hand in hand. If you want to become better at drawing, some things you need to so now basically let me show you guys what the T overlap is. You see this spot right here where these two shapes intersect, this T line that forms here, that's the T overlap. You can see another T overlap here. The T overlap shape can vary. It can appear like this, but as long as it forms some variation of a T shape, you can call it T overlap. It is a way we show depth in a drawing to make it look like an object is behind another object. So now look at these three shapes. Now look at these three shapes. On their own, I've been able to communicate some form of depth on them. But then how can you determine which shape is in front of which? That is where T overlap comes in. You can see, putting these shapes like this, you can't really determine where each of these shapes stand in space. Which one is in front of which one is behind which. But then when you bring T overlap into the you can see it is much easier to distinguish which one is ahead of which and the position of each of the shapes. It's a lot more easier to do that. And the T overlap is actually pretty easy. Whatever shape that forms the top of the T is the shape that is in front of the other shape. So that's pretty much T overlap. That's need to discuss is spatial awareness. What spatial awareness is pretty much is just your ability to, using T overlap, your ability to position different objects in space. And there you have it. That's pretty much spatial awareness. The ability to create spatial awareness. So now that we've discussed all the extra terms, I need to just pass. Let's draw our box. It's in perspective. That top is too long. Remember the rules. From 1 point perspective, every other line will be horizontal, perfectly vertical, except from the lines going towards the vanishing point. Over and we missed our line. Let's try again. That's better. One more time. We got it fairly. It's okay. Let's try another one. Let's put the points for accuracy this time. That line is too thick for my liking, so I'm going to soften it up because it's behind, it's inside the box. It shouldn't be that clear. The inner line shouldn't be so clear. Can you guys still see them? So then now let's get the center of the top of our box and get the center of the bottom of our box. Now let's put in our ellipse. Make sure the edges of the ellipse touch these places, the edges of the box. The whole point of this is for you to get an idea of spatial awareness and understanding how to arrange the shapes in space. Because when we get to shape manipulation and mannequinization, that's when you start seeing more advanced versions of these things. That's when you start drawing human figures and all those things. And you see how useful all these ones are now when we reach that level. Because if you want to draw the arm of an human being, the upper arm can be simplified into a cylinder. Then you can simplify the elbow as a ball. Then turn this lower arm into the top part into a cylinder. Top part into a cylindrical shape. Then the lower part is kind of like a box. It's not completely cylindrical. It's because of the shape of your ulna and your radius. That's what gives it this box-like shape. Let me make this one shorter. It's not this long. Then your palm sits on this place. Your palm itself is another box. Your thumb this kind of triangular shape sitting on the side of your palm. Then your fingers, we're going to group all your fingers as one here and put your thumb over here. Now let's give this hand some life, shall we? Now let me just flesh it out using the barrel. There you have it, your makeshift arm. Okay, this hand is looking weird because the anatomy is not right. You get the idea? And you can see me using T overlap a lot in this drawing. T overlap here, T overlap here, T overlap. Right away, it gives this hand a kind of three-dimensional feel. This is off the top of my head, by the way. I'm not using any form of reference to draw this, but without thinking of it. But when you are conscious of the way you use your T overlap, it just becomes a lot more effective. Let me do something else for you guys. So this is where we're going to with this. Let me draw a head for you. So basically the head is divided into two major portions in an artistic standpoint. If you want to mechanize the head is made up of the cranium and the jaw. Now you can see I've simplified this thing into two shapes. These are the two shapes I've simplified it into. A sphere. This is not the circle. This is not the circle. This is a sphere and a triangular shape for the jaw. I just added a little extra at the back here. So this is the traditional shape of the skull. This is what the skull looks like if you simplify it. So now let's do some magic. Let me zoom in on it so that you can see it more clearly. So at its very basics, what we are looking for here is the other. Okay, now I'm already straying from the point. So now what's next? We find our brow line. The brow line is generally halfway like this, or that's a little too high, but it's okay. So this is where your eyebrows is, where your eyebrows, not where your eye is. Then halfway down again, that's where your nose is going to be. Then for the mouth, this mouth area, you divide it into three. Then for this top, you divide it into two, and that's all. You can divide it into two again. So this is where the eye is, you see. But the eye socket occupies this entire space. Then you put your nose in there. You know, I told you this is where the nose sits. That's not where the tip of the nose sits, but that's where the nose attaches to the face. So now let's put our lips. Our lips are going to lie on the one we put in the middle. You know, we divided this place into three. Okay, is it the first or the second one? Okay, so our lips will be on this first line. Then right here is going to be our jaw. Let me bring this jaw up a little, and we'll fit our eye into the eyeball over here. So you can see, understanding the shapes is what is key. If you can understand the shapes, it means you can break down anything. And let's just attach a neck to that. If you can understand the shapes, you can break down anything, no matter what it is, and you can draw it. If you can break it down, you can draw it. And just like how the head has its shapes, and its volume, you know, this head is a sphere, and this jawline is kind of like a triangular cuboidal shape. Everything has its own volume. Just like how everything has its own volume, all the materials, all the parts of the head also too, they have their volume. Let me simplify this. Let me give this ear a little more life. And if you want to find your hairline, just do like this. And that's your hairline over there. Okay, this hairline looks a little bit backward. You can always add to it if you want to not let it look like my own hairline. So, to cut long story short, if you can simplify it, get another tip. Remember that T overlap I talked about earlier? A big mistake that a lot of people make when drawing eyes, that they draw the eyes like this and they just put your brother inside. So now let me just give you guys a quick tip on how to draw eyes. T overlap is very common in the eyes. The eyes is actually not flat like this, like how you guys draw it. It is actually a ball. Then the eyelid wraps around it. This is a side view of the eye. Then the eyelid wraps around it. This is too thick. Let's soften that a little. The eyelid wraps around it like this. And where the flaps meet the skin, that's where you get the creases of the eyes. So just with this simple illustration of the eye, you can already see T overlap in effect. T overlap here again, T overlap here, T overlap. And you can see another thing. You know, I told you the more planes an object has, the more three-dimensional it looks. Now look at this eye up here. How you can see it doesn't look really three-dimensional like that. Now let's look at this plane down here. It has a plane here. It has a lower plane here, or the lower eyelid. There's another plane here. There's another plane here. There's another plane here. But all these planes, I just group them as one, so those ones are not really clear. And if you want to draw the pupil in the eye, it actually sits back away from the sclera a little. This white part you see is actually the sclera. It is in front of the eye, so there's kind of like an inner circle. Let's call it an inner circle. That's where the pupil sits on. If you didn't understand, now you do. So there are a lot of things concerning the eye. The eye itself is actually pretty complex. So if you want to draw an eye, quick tip: the top eyelid is not just one straight line. Break it into 3 planes. Then remember the tear ducts. The tear ducts, that's this place of the eye. Then the bottom lid is just 2 planes. Draw one confident line, draw another confident line. You can make it double to give it some 3-dimensionality. We're adding a plane to this bottom side. Then don't forget the crease. Is it called a crease? I think it's called a crease, yeah. So don't forget it. And remember, we have eyelashes too. So how I do my own eyelashes is that I just make the upper eyelid a lot heavier. Let me put the camera on it. Then I just do a bunch of strokes from it like this. Eyelashes are not my strongest suit, but then I don't do much portraits, so people don't really pay attention to my eyelashes like that. Then for this, the iris, when you are drawing it, draw a full circle, but don't let the full circle be inside the eye. You can draw a full circle on top. And your iris. Then you can put your highlight over here, somewhere over here. Then let's shade that in. And there you have it, your beautiful eye. By the time you put some shading on this now, it start looking better. So you can see it, you have an eye. So the way I explained that now, I didn't really use shapes, but the way I was thinking in the aspects of shapes and planes. Those are the two very important things you have to learn. So when we get to shape manipulation and all that, you guys will see how all these basics I'm teaching you here will apply to what you do there. Shape manipulation and mannequinization, those are the two most difficult places. So once you master all these basics, shape manipulation and mannequinization, to be a lot more easier. Like mannequinization is pretty much what we did for this head, carrying component parts, then joining them together to give you your results. That's pretty much mannequinization. That's it. So the more power you have over these basic shapes, the more power you have over your final drawing. It's just simple math. Forget anatomy for now, because I think it was earlier this year or last year I started learning anatomy. Then the more I learned anatomy, the more I realized that it's just shape manipulation. It's just the knowledge of anatomy that is guiding them to know how to manipulate the shapes better. So in short, what I'm saying is learn your shapes and do your assignments. These assignments are giving you are not a one-day thing. For instance, your line control, don't forget it. Anytime you are drawing a shape, you know some places here I didn't use line control and you saw how messy the shape started looking. Even this, I didn't mind my lines. I can see how messy the whole thing is looking. So line control is very important. Try to keep your line control as consistent as possible in order to get a really good looking finished drawing. What else do I need to tell you guys? Don't do drugs. I just want to supply this extra tips so that you guys can understand that it's not be like we're just taking a goose chase. We're just in a goose chase and stuff like that. So I hope I'm not ranting too much already. Like this old man is talking too much. So since we're studying perspective, I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to give you guys some assignments now. So the first assignment you have is to draw a bunch of boxes. Like I said, you are dedicating one piece of paper to each of these assignments. One page of A4 paper to each of these assignments. Start with 1 point perspective. Feel free to use a line. You draw your rising line, put your vanishing point, then draw. You don't need to draw your grid, just draw a box like this. We're doing 1 point perspective now. So we connect our box to our vanishing point and we draw the box. So try to draw the entire box with the inner corners too. But when you draw the inner corners, make the lines for the inner corners a lot more shallow than the outer corners. So here we have it. Try to make them a lot more shallow and make sure everything is following the perspective grid. Then this is 1 point perspective, right? 1 point perspective. So these boxes, you fill up an entire page with these boxes, these perspective boxes. Make sure you overlap some of them to get that three-dimensional effect that we're looking for. You can overlap some of them however you want to do it. So you see what I'm talking about. So this is 1 point perspective. So this exact same thing I just said now, you do it for 2 points perspective again. You remember 2 points perspective, Abi? You do it for 2 point perspective. You fill up a page with boxes. Minimum of 8 boxes must be on that page. Do you hear me? You overlap some of them for spatial awareness. Then you do it again for 1 point perspective. But this time you add a cylinder inside each of the boxes. You can feel free to use ruler to draw your boxes. Feel free. You don't have to do it freehand like I've been doing it since. Feel free to use ruler. If you want to draw your perspective grid, feel free to use ruler. If you are doing it digitally, you can use your grid tool. My whole point is that when you are drawing your boxes, don't just have the knowledge of perspective in mind. Then another thing you guys should take note of is don't stick to your ruler forever. Practice doing your perspective grids freehand. At first they might be wonky, but along the line you get it eventually. So that's pretty much it for you guys today. Your final assignment, I'm going to write the assignments in the description for you guys again, or I'll write it on the WhatsApp group. That's how I'll be doing it. So your assignments for this one is your final assignment. You know the assignment I gave you for the last video where I said you should pick 3 materials in your house and draw them using boxes, using the blocking in technique. Your final assignment is to draw those materials again, but this time use your knowledge of perspective, overlap, and 3D shapes. Make sure you apply them to draw your boxes. I want to see the difference. I want to see the improvement that you guys have made. And these exercises, don't forget your line exercises and your basic shapes exercises, those triangles and shapes and stuff. Because when you advance, you realize that simplicity, the more better it gets, the more better you become at simplifying stuff. That's the funny thing about artists. Artists learn the complex stuff in order to be able to simplify it better. A lot of these artists that you see that have very simple looking styles, the thing that is inside their brain that is behind all the amazing drawings they're creating. But I just used to admire those guys. An artist that can simplify effectively is an artist that have learned a lot of things. It's not those people know what they are doing. They're not just making beautiful mistakes. So that was all for this today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys in the next video. Love you.